Our speaker is going to be Dr. Parellada from Spain, who will give an initial presentation on this topic. And after that, and specific questions, we can open this up to a more general discussion about the nature and challenges of participating in scientific collaborations across Europe. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there were mixed communications on how to organize this session, so I have a presentation. Also, I'm not a native English speaker, so this helps me, and probably you don't need that. So, so they asked us to tell a little bit of what is your story session, so I will be giving a couple of examples of contributing to European projects, and then a little bit of the Spanish brain health plan. So I need to contextualize my work. So I work for a clinical, I'm a clinician. I do also biological research with all the challenges that it supposes in terms of time, support, and funds to do at the same time clinical and research. So I have private and public funds to do research, and I belong to several networks of research in Spain, private funding, different public funding, and affiliations to Spanish University and also University of California in San Francisco. And some conflict of interest in terms of consultancy and grant support from pharmacy. So I will give two examples, one of a European network where I am a PI of one work package. And this is the largest grant ever given for autism research. So that's the Autism Innovative Medicines initiative that provided almost 55 million of euros plus in-kind contributions from pharma and other institutions, totally 113 million. So we wanted to stratify the whole bunch of autistic patients into different subgroups with specific underlying biological mechanisms in order to stratify for clinical trials. So I was in charge of a tiny bit of this. So I was the principal investigator of a clinical trial, the first clinical trial that involved 7 sites in Europe, France, England, United Kingdom, and Spain. So it was only 5 million, but for that, we had to set up academic clinical trials. And to set up academic clinical trials, we were supposed to start recruiting patients like 6 months after the start of the project. And we had to do all these tasks just to setting up an academic clinical trial. This, and this, and this, and this. And this. So this is all administrative work that we had to set up in addition to the conducting of the clinical trial. And that means leading with regulators, leading with ethics committees, and so on. So as you can imagine, this took us almost 2 years to do. The other example comes from a call, which is personalized and precision medicine. This is European funds, but this is a multi-site Spanish study. Here I am the coordinator, so it's 7 sites in Spain, and we wanted to create a cohort with autism, 1,000 autism patients in Spain, and to do genomics and metabolomics and clinical deep phenotyping in order to two things: to improve genetic diagnosis, so to try to find from clinical data which were the patients that most benefited from genomic or exomic sequencing, and also to identify clusters of patients with common biological mechanisms involved. So the good part of it was that they gave us 3 million to, most of it was for genome sequencing, but a lot was also for personal contracting. That was really, really positive, and it would have been impossible to conduct this trial with this. And also it was 4 years. Usually it's 3 years, at least in Spain, to conduct most projects, but this was 4 years, and we were able to hire 11 people, including psychologists, bioinformatics, statistician, and so on. So, problem was that we were supposed to use previously recruited patients and samples up to 700 to start with this 1,000 cohort. The problem is, so they valued that we had previous samples in a biobank and so on, but the European requirements for data sharing did not match the national data protection regulators. So we are now going back to all 700 patients that we previously had in order to reconsent. So the time, as you suppose, it's really, really enlarged. So these are two great difficulties that we think we need a lot of effort, as I was saying this morning, of infrastructures and support within the European Union in order to be able to conduct these multi-site clinical trials. So the main challenges would be support, initiatives and mechanisms to free up clinicians' time for high-quality research, and office support on legislation and administrative procedures. A lot of more money for personal and long-term contracts and funding for sufficient support and training of national offices to harmonize procedures across Europe, and time. We need more time if we need to really put together different countries and teams to set up projects. So we need longer projects and funding. As I said before, I was not supposed to be here. Mara Dirsen was the one. She's the president of the Spanish Brain Council. And I want to share with you also what we have been doing in the last presidency, where Spain was leading Europe. And so we were leading also some events. So we did a couple of activities from the Spanish Brain Council. We managed to enter an event that was meant to be for cancer, the precision medicine in brain in health, which happened in Valencia during the Spanish presidency. So we could include a brain health part within that. That was really, really important. And then we organized a second event, Our Brains, Our Future, which was conducted in the Senate of Spain with politicians and many researchers and different associations. So we did support and did some activities to support the precision medicine in brain health initiatives across Europe. In this other event, Our Brains, Our Future in the Senate, we put into the scene the value of brain research from basic to clinical. So one of the things that we want to emphasize is the importance of funding basic research, as we were hearing in the last session. It's even though we think it's really important to have translational research and products that are useful for patients, but we also need basic long-term research in order to inform mechanisms and treatments and everything. And just a little bit of a summary of the Spanish Brain Plan. We think we need harmonized plans, but also we have specific problems in each country, so we need specific plans. And I'm just showing the highlights. So our first aim is to understand the situation in Spain. We don't have registries for main disorders, so we want to create those. We want to promote brain research, both basic and translational. We want to promote brain health from the beginning of life, from child development. We want to support adequate clinical research and treatment for brain disorders. We are emphasizing and we are working in alignment with many patient and families organizations, and we have written this plan with them, and particularly in patient, families, and scientist education of how to conversate and how to share information from both parts, and a lot of advocacy. So we've been involved with different workshops with the Spanish Parliament and with different advisory and decision-making committees for science policy. We have been meeting with National Scientific Advisory Office, which is a newly created office in Spain. We have had meetings with Spanish parliamentarians, and we will have 2 workshops for public and patient involvement it's not going to be in October, which is past, but next year. And we are in contact with different members of the European Parliament, and we are supporting the different initiatives. And we have already had responses from different members of the European Parliament to show them our plan, or to try to participate and transmit these ideas. And this is it.
So thank you very much, Mara, for incredibly clear talk with very definite articulation of challenges and potential solutions. This is supposed to be an interactive session. So at this point in time, maybe we can try and start to have a slightly broader conversation about the issues that people are having with collaboration. But first, would anyone like to ask any specific questions based on Mara's presentation? No. Okay. So as it's a small group, I suggest we start to discuss maybe some of the everyday challenges that we're facing, not just with the administrative challenge of dealing with the kind of funding instruments that you're facing in this case, but with respect to what are the barriers or what is the inertia that's preventing us from collaborating more across European countries. And from my perspective, it does seem to be very much that when we're seeking research funding, most European countries do not have mechanisms in place to have multi-PI grants across European countries. So if you want to have a fundamental or discovery research project, it's okay to get letters from people. People like having international collaborators across Europe on their research proposals. But it's very difficult to find the opportunities for multi-PI grants. And the ones that do exist tend to be quite administratively burdensome, have uncertain success rates, and generally require people to form coalitions of PIs that don't necessarily know each other in order to have diversity of particular countries, and often try to make up the topic as they're writing the grant. And I personally often find it quite frustrating that when I'm trying to collaborate with some of my close colleagues in Spain, in Germany, or in the UK, that we can't really find the funding mechanisms most of the time in which to come together, with the exception of possibly the ERC Synergy program, which is of course highly elite and highly difficult. So I think one positive thing that we could be advocating for over the next couple of years, and we're already seeing this in the ITRE committee, which obviously you're effectively lobbying through Spain, through the Spanish Brain Council, is to simplify the funding instruments, is to make it so that more aspects of FP10, of Horizon funding in general, is more simple, more streamlined, and that project grants with collaboration there should be no barrier towards doing them. And rather than having mechanisms that have agenda that are too top-down, to have funding calls where they are all PI-led, beyond just the European Research Council, but also other FP10 calls within brain health. And it seems to me that is something that in forums like this we can be advocating for, because this is a fundamental difference between the US situation and the European situation. It is trivial for PIs from different parts of the United States to have joint funding proposals for their different universities. There's simply no barrier to doing that. Whereas in Europe, we face, we don't have the same opportunities. The funding instruments are quite unattractive to many people because of the administrative overheads. And the funding success rates are just not the same. But does this make sense? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. So simplifying would be one of my key words here, simplifying the processes. There are things that have been done, for example, for clinical trials, we have all the problem with committees and regulators and that has been a little bit simplified with a centralized regulatory system, the CTs. So now we only submit protocols, that's for clinical trials with humans, so we only submit protocols to one agency, but then they have to go to countries, so we are simplifying them. For instance, in the clinical trial 2 that we are conducting within this big network, the AIMS to Trials network, we are only using 2 countries instead of 3. The British, well, the UK regulations have been impossible to combine timely with the rest of Europe, and particularly after Brexit, that has been more complicated. But even before, and so there are some initiatives to really, harmonize, simplify and centralize mechanisms. But we're different countries and we have different laws, and sometimes there are conflicting regulations, and either the European office makes it simple and help and give resources and lawyers and administrative offices, or it's impossible. So for this huge network, we have one of the partners is co-PIs, Arctic, in I think it's in Germany or France, I'm not sure now. But they get a lot of money just for the legal procedures, but still they have to do a lot of training in our local offices to speed things up, and we cannot use the time of the projects for that. We cannot use that. That has to run in parallel, I think. We don't need to use the money and the time of scientific projects for that kind of logistics. It's really difficult, and the requirements that you have like 5 different PIs from 6 different countries in different parts of Europe, and maybe you don't have the expertise in those countries to do things. It's really, we all want to do European projects, but it's really challenging, and it's not, well, we need more money and more time.
Yes.
I'm from the Serbian Brain Council, president of the Serbian Brain Council, but of course I'm a neuroscientist in the field of biomedicine, studying neurodegenerative disease models. I'm not working with patients, but I plan to do so because we have some innovative diagnostics approaches, and I was really glad to see that you opened this topic in your project on personalized and precise precision medicine. I think this is the main challenge, and this is the right way to go with the clinical studies. So I want to ask you now, when you mentioned all this, the humongous tables you showed us in the beginning was done with 2 countries, patients from 2 countries?
No, the recruitment was in 3 countries. So it was 3 sites in the United Kingdom, Glasgow, London, and Newcastle, and then it was 1 site in France and 3 sites in Spain. So it was 3 countries, 7 sites.
Yes, so it's probably a lot of administration that you have to collaborate in this, and of course you need funding, and as you said, the indirect costs are not enough. I think that's it's a bit sad because I come from the so-called widening country, and we have always to look at more developed countries like Spain, and I see you have the same problems as we have. But okay, it's a little bit different level, but our problem is really basic. We don't have offices. Okay, our people, I'm coming from the School of Biology, and I collaborate, of course, with the School of Medicine, and they have a kind of an office for projects, but we even don't have a dedicated office for EU projects, like many countries in EU have. And it's very difficult for us even to do a project management, because we do it ourselves, and we just get some data from the offices, and we have to crunch the data ourselves, or I have to ask my students to do it, because we don't get any funding for that type of work, except indirect costs, which are not enough. This is actually just kind of a comment that it will also, of course, help if we would have I, for example, finished an MSCP Marie Curie grant, which was having consortium of 8, but I didn't get much help in management for these other countries, which were from EU. I was doing the coordination, so I don't want to mention what problems I had in my final report. It's really rare to have projects which are really run collaboratively by PI. So I think this is a good also comment that we need more collaborative project, but not that one is leading it, but that's really a consortium working together and guiding the project. So that's just kind of a comment to boost the discussion.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned is you cannot enter one of these projects without a project management group or partner. It's impossible. The other thing is I had a project in the first Spanish call for independent clinical trials, and I swear that it was my last time conducting an academic clinical trial without all the help that the industry provides. But then I did it again within this European network, because there was this project management office and thing, and I really believe in academic clinical trials, and you design your endpoints and who you want to recruit, which sites you want to involve, and all that. So I think, and that's very good science, I think. So, but we need to advocate for the management support. If not, it's impossible. One thing that you may have is an opportunity if you don't have those management offices. From the beginning, when you start setting up one, you need people that is really an expert in European policies and management. Ours, they were experts in Spanish regulators, and learning new regulations and new procedures sometimes is more difficult than starting from the beginning. So that would be one advice, I don't know.
It seems to be that there are many member countries that have existing funding mechanisms that allow collaborative projects to happen very, very easily. I mean, certainly within the United Kingdom, there are funders that make it very straightforward for multiple principal investigators to come together for either fundamental or clinical research in a way where the administration or the structure of the funding is not a barrier. And of course, for the biomedical budget in Europe, about 10% of it is coming from European federal funding, the other 90% is coming directly from member states. So it seems that both sides could learn something from each other, in the sense that if member states opened up their funding calls such that collaborative projects could go to PIs working in other countries, and on the federal level, if European funding mechanisms learned more about how to reduce friction and inertia from looking at how collaborative grants can run quite efficiently, as they currently do in certain member countries, as they do in the USA, that would be one progressive way forward. Mm-hmm. And do you, in your own experience in engaging with MEPs, are any of them aware of this and how the European mechanisms can learn from the efficiencies? Not from every member country, but some member countries.
The conversations are pending. We have those interviews scheduled for 2025. But for the moment, the response has been good, but they have to listen now. I think we have some strengths in Europe because we have the national health systems are much stronger than in the US, and that helps recruitment, at least for clinical research. But also we are not a unique country as they are. So even though they are states, but they have more common regulations. We are forced to collaborate because now it's becoming increasingly difficult to share samples, for example, or data with the United States. We have been involved in some networks with them, and it is so much time consuming, even longer times than within Europe, because ethical regulators are very different. And so I think we are forced to collaborate within Europe, but we need much more support. So they need to, the officers, the funders need to understand the complexities, because if not, we end up doing so much work that prevents us from doing what we know how to do, which is the research.
Can you a little bit emphasize when you said academic clinical studies? This is opposed to pharma studies. Yeah. No,
yeah, so
I understand.
They are sometimes called independent studies. So here we had some help from pharma, but it was only in kind. Well, it was almost fully academic. So we did choose the molecule, we did write the protocol, we did choose the sites, all the outcome measures and everything. And we did conduct, and we owned the data. So that's...
But you don't want to repeat that.
Well, I have repeated it already. I did one 10 years ago, the Spanish one, and now we have done a second one, and we are in the way of doing the third one.
But that's the right way to go, I think. I mean, the academic clinical study, that's how it should start. And then the pharma can continue maybe playing a little bit with the same molecule.
The only way of studying what you think you have to study.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments from other members of the audience? Well, then I think we can close this session. So thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for those who stuck with us through the day and participated in this discussion.